So hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Venus Project Supporters Show. I'm Aiden Fry, POC from the UK, and I'm joined today by co-host Tom Hockney, who's a POC from the UK, and also by our special guest Mick Pettinger. Do you guys want to say hello and just a quick introduction? I know we've met you before, Tom, but Mick?
Yeah, I'm old news. Tom, 19, Hull in the UK, in college currently. That's about it.
Nice.
Mick Pettinger. I'm new to this, so I'll be the one asking a lot more questions.
That's great, thanks. All right, so today we've got an interesting show lined up. So to start off with, Tom's going to lead us in an introduction to the scientific method, and we're going to watch a little an excerpt from Future by Design, which is a film by the Venus Project. I say watch, I mean listen to an excerpt. And Mick's going to give us an insight into a Chilean socialist project that he's been investigating from, what, the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 71 to 72.
Yeah, Project CyberSyn. So that's coming up in a bit. That's going to be very interesting. And then I think to end the show, we're going to talk about surveillance, which is an interesting topic, and I think that's going to end us off well. So, Tom, I guess over to you.
Yeah,
and
okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, cheers. Yeah, so I think one of the fundamentals to understanding the Venus Project and the resource-based economy is also understanding the scientific method of thinking and scientific principles, and how we should apply them to kind of our values, our day-to-day life, and especially how we should apply them to managing society. So, I mean, I'd like to start off with kind of my definition of a resource-based economy to me. So, a resource-based economy, as I understand it, is a redesigned society which uses the scientific principles and methods of thinking to create a sustainable system which provides for the human condition and the environment globally without prejudice. So, I mean, there are a few words in there that can be interpreted differently, and hopefully throughout this kind of podcast they'll become more clear as to what I mean by them. Secondly, our aim as a race when building society, I define the goal as providing for the human condition globally without prejudice. So yeah, we'll attempt to define that later. Got this short clip now, and it's Jacques Fresco talking about the scientific method in a bit more detail into how it differs from how a lot of people are taught in today's culture.
Science is really the ability to predict the next most probable. That's what the real meaning of science is. Gaining the ability to predict the next most probable. When we talk about science, we're talking about a method of looking at a situation, a method of evaluation that differs from the opinionated system. If you ask me, I'll tell you. The scientific method has no special connection to truth. It really has a better way of looking at things than the earlier systems, which everything was attributed to gods or demons.
This is where we get into applying the scientific method to society.
Yes. Now, this is not in the book yet. The scientific method applied to society is something people don't think about much. But if you want to know where the answers may lie, it is in the application of the methods of science with human concern and environmental concern. The future by design refers to the application of the methods of science, not scientists, the methods of science to the social system. Naturally, even the methods of science undergo change, and as they change, so would the future. If we use the scientific method throughout the world, the probability of war drops to zero. The probability of human suffering disappears. Deprivation, poverty, crime, all those things tend to disappear because there's no basis for it.
Jacques spent a lot of time before studying people. He started studying how animals behave and how to change the behavior of animals or predict the behavior of animals. And it came to the conclusion that it's really the environment that changes behavior and enables us to behave the way we do. We're not born with prejudice and bigotry and anger and greed. It's really generated and nurtured by the environment that we live in. That's why we feel that unless you change your environment and change the experiences, we'll get the same aberrant behavior within people unless the environment is changed.
Any culture in the world today tries to educate people so they'll serve a function in that particular culture. In other words, if you're brought up in a Nazi culture, the flag waving and the swastika are the kind of things they put forth. If you're brought up in a primitive tribe, handling the javelin, the bow and arrow would be the kind of thing that you're exposed to. So people are conditioned to serve the interests of an established culture. Who does that to us? The owners of the institutions, the establishment. So they give us a value system that would support existing structures, whether it be religious, non-religious, industrial, military. When children say, you know, Daddy, what's the greatest country in the world? Of course our country is the greatest country in the world. Which God is the right God, Daddy? Our God. All the other gods are false gods. So picture this, a Roman family taking its kids to see the Christians being fed to the lions. And the kids are watching. Dad, can we come next week to see Christians being fed to lions? Are these kids sick? No. Their value system is distorted. So I'm strictly concerned with the environment that people are reared in, raised in. And if that environment is altered, so will behavior be altered. You reorient the environment, that in turn reorients people. But if you reorient people without touching the environment, it'll slip back. So when you try to think about the future, remember this. The process with which you think about things is based upon indoctrination, what you're given by your society. So your range of thought is limited by the dominant values of your society. So learning to be flexible in values takes a long time. And in talking to kids when I was very young, I had to be very patient with them if I were to make any progress. I talked about the concept of God. Your concept of God, my concept of God, and his concept of God, so different. I wonder what God is really like, or if there is a God for that matter. And why would God permit war and disease if he's all-loving? It didn't make sense to me. Too many clashes. So I questioned that. Of course, I felt a little uncomfortable during questioning the concept of God. But then reading about the history and evolution of gods, there were many different gods. The god of war, the god of peace, the god of love, which was more like the people that invented them. They behaved, they got angry, they made sacrifices, they created floods when they didn't like the way things were going. And this did not come through as superior intelligence. Primitive people, going back in time, when they saw lightning, they thought that the deity was angry. Why else would it not occur? When a hurricane swept the land, they got rid of certain people in their tribe as a sacrifice, hoping that the gods would not produce a second hurricane. However, if it did occur again, then they sacrificed some of the younger people. Rarely would the chief sacrifice himself, but he's always got a whole line of people ready to sacrifice. So you have that problem with human beings. Anything that occurs beyond their comprehension, they have to invent an excuse for. They have to create gods and demons to account for things, because people come to the leadership of that community. No matter how primitive the tribe, they say, how come bad wind blow people off island? I said, you not behave good. You not make not enough contribution to volcano. Throw your brother-in-law into volcano. Maybe it doesn't erupt then. So if you throw your brother-in-law into the volcano and it still erupts, you have to throw your sister-in-law in. So you get metaphysics, you get religion, you get superstition, knock wood, or you wear a rabbit's foot. Just remember that the rabbit had 4 of them. Didn't do him any good. So on down the line, superstition prevails wherever ignorance prevails. Myth is a way of saying to the little guy working out there in the field, when he says, what does all this amount to? I never seem to be getting anywhere. When you kick the bucket, Everything is there for you. If you don't get it in this life, you'll get it in the next. If you remain good, the amount of superstition that a culture can absorb would be directly proportionate to the amount of information people have. So in the future, with adequate supply of information, more than that which is given today, considerably more, you don't have, knock wood. Today is my lucky day. When your number is up, it's up. All that will disappear in the future.
I look at this as everything he's doing is to be as being the utmost in spirituality. Instead of looking for a better world later, after you die, it's really building the type of things that all religious teachings talk about here on earth. We don't have to wait till we die for that. We can confront our problems today and not wait for the Messiah to come with the white robe and change things, or not wait till we all go to heaven at a certain time, or those believers that go to heaven at a certain time. We can deal with the problems today. For instance, in religion, they put things on the will of God. If there's an accident, it's the will of God, and it stops you from thinking. It stops you from being innovative. It stops you from thinking about, well, how do we redesign the transportation system so we don't have those problems anymore? So he's worked with priests and he's worked with religious people and kind of expand their horizons a bit so they can be more creative. They look at the environment that shapes people's behavior, and they don't call them good or bad anymore. They think about shaping the environment to get more constructive behavior.
If you were to ask me to redesign the world and the way people live, first thing I would have to do is conduct a survey, find out what we have, how much water do we have, how much people, how much arable land area. After I know that, then I can base the parameters of design on what we have. What you really need is an understanding of the Earth's resources by agronomists, geologists, geophysicists, people who study the Earth. They don't give you their opinion. They say there's more life in the Antarctic. That's not an opinion, that's a finding. So in the future, no more opinions. Do you have information in this area? No, I don't. Good. Here's where you might get it, or here's how you might go about finding out. Yeah. So I'm saying all people need clean air, clean water, arable land, and a good relationship, a language. So I'm not superimposing Fresco's concepts. I'm using the earth as the measure. In other words, we have to live in accordance with the carrying capacity of the earth. Does that make sense?
So I'd like to start with one of the key points that I got from that video, which is science has no relation to truth. It is simply a better method of looking at things with the aim of evaluating the universe and existence around us. So the more accurate the evaluation and understanding of our surroundings, the more reliable and useful ways we can manipulate our surroundings to our benefit. So to put it in some perspective, an example of a less reliable thought process or method of thinking would be what I call belief. So belief in the unobservable and unmeasurable. So an example of this would be, say, if I were comforting someone, I may say everything will be all right. And that's quite a common phrase, and that's something that we pick up from our culture and from the media. It's said quite a lot. But what are you actually saying there? So everything will be all right. I mean, I can't evaluate all of the possible outcomes of the situation, and what I'm saying there doesn't really have any value. It's there with the objective to comfort. But I mean, if you really want to comfort someone, for me, if I wanted comforting, I'd rather someone say something like, okay, so here's the problem. Okay, outline. This is bad. This needs changing, and here are some of the solutions. If someone came to me in a time of need with that kind of evaluation, then that would provide more comfort for me in the future, because that would help me overcome my problems, as opposed to simply saying something like everything will be all right.
Yeah, there's a really good quote that is very similar to what you've just said there by Hayakawa in Language and Thought and Action, which is about that is from a semantic point of view, that book. It's very interesting. So if anyone's interested in kind of words, definitely go and have a look at it. But he's using really the scientific method with words there, and what he's saying is to help people. What you need is basically a good map of the actual terrain that you're in, which is a good understanding of the world around you and what to expect and what can happen. And the scientific method can give you that through kind of experience and through experiments and kind of validated reports to try and get your map, which is inside your brain, to be as close to the terrain of the actual physical land as possible. I think it's the very first thing you said there as well, which is science has no relation to truth, which is such a good, like it's a powerful statement. Because I watched a short 10-minute YouTube video about the scientific method before this with Richard Feynman. Or, sorry, can't say his name. Feynman? Anyway, if you search on YouTube for scientific method, it's one of the first ones up there. And he goes into explains why no scientific law or principle or any sort of evaluation that you can make from an experiment is ever true. It just means that it hasn't been proved wrong yet. It could be that in the future that we have new data, different experimental methods to prove a law wrong. And that is completely fine. Once a law has been proved wrong, then its use is negated, and you move on and you create a new law to make the old law obsolete.
Yeah, like in today's culture, often like it seems like a negative thing to be proven wrong, or a negative thing to have someone else create something better than one of your designs. But in science, that's a positive thing. It represents progression.
Well, in the scientific method, some science today does kind of have that problem because there's investment in it, and you have to be proved right, and otherwise you don't get paid.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas, carry on, sorry.
I'd like to touch on truth as well. I mean, like the concept of truth, it seems to me almost maybe impossible to reach. Like, for example, you could go outside on what you would perceive as a hot day and say it is hot, it is warm, the temperature is high, that is the truth. But then to a different animal, like a lizard, for example, it may be mild or even cold. So science provides means to measure that in Fahrenheit, Celsius, like mathematical objective means to measure it. Instead of saying it is, it's true that it's hot, it is 32 Celsius, it's 32 degrees. So then, like, what is truth? I mean, some people may search for the truth, but if everything we perceive is subjective, then but outside of like objective boundaries and measurements which maths provides, then what is the truth but a subjective interpretation of reality?
Yeah, everything that we receive has to go through our perceptors, and is it perceptors or receptors that Jack calls it? Anyway, close enough. But you interpret the light that comes from the sun and bounces off something, and then it goes into your eyes. And you interpret that data, and then you form a mental image inside your brain. So what you see is not real. It's only an interpretation of what is real.
Yeah,
it's very hard to kind of.
Yeah, and human beings inherently have limited perception because of our the boundaries of our senses. So a great example Jacques gives is basically he once had a discussion with like a famous scientist, and the scientist asked him, do you search for truth or something? Bearing in mind, I'm not quoting this exactly, just from my memory. And Jacques said, "Yeah, I want to know what is true, And so the scientist said, "Well, give me an example. What you mean?" And Jacques said, "Well, my skin, it's smooth. It's smooth here." And he touched it, and it felt smooth. But then the scientist put his hand under a microscope, and there were bumps and chasms, and it looked like a mountain range. And then it's like, well, if you had the sensory perception of a microscope, basically, it wouldn't look smooth. And if your fingers could feel that fine, it wouldn't feel smooth either. So is it smooth? Is it bumpy? What is it? I mean, yeah.
It's great. Well, yeah, like the solidest steel, completely smooth and varnished, is still, you know, mainly made up of empty air when you get down to the atomic level. Well, not empty air, but empty space when you get down to the atomic level, and then it's built up of more complex structures, and then they get bigger and bigger, and then they end up being this smooth thing. And it's entirely dependent on the range of light waves that you can see and the amount of definition that you can see.
Hey,
I like what Fresco says about opinions as well. I think he said it in a different part of the video as well. When an opinion's just an uninformed opinion, that's like anybody, just guessing at what the truth is. Whereas an informed opinion's somebody that's researched it and looked into it and tested whatever they're talking about.
yeah, so like, how close to belief is an opinion kind of thing. Like, so if you believe that everything will be all right, but you don't have sufficient evidence for it, then it's inaccurate, and it is potentially dangerous to a situation. So an opinion is kind of quite similar to that, depending on how you define opinion.
Yeah, you could say that you don't need an opinion with a correct enough theory or, you know, practice. If you came up with a model that was in itself completely obvious that it was better than the previous model, you don't need an opinion to say that it's better. It just is better.
Like I was going to say, when you can have an opinion, and then it if you validate it with scientific methods and principles, then you've got something to support that opinion. But without that, it's relatively valueless outside of understanding that it only applies to you. So, say for example, I like I don't know a genre of music. I like jazz, but as long as I understand that it only applies to me, and I can't say I like jazz and therefore, you know, it's a good genre of music. You know, it's objectively. Well, how do you measure that? I mean, you could do surveys of a population, and then you'd probably end up finding out that a lot of people, you know, don't like jazz, and then so like there's a fine line between opinion, and maybe there's not the words to describe it. There's not semantic enough to describe the difference between an educated opinion and a well.
Well, I think sorry, just to cut over you. I think you're going along the lines there that is quite nice. With again that Feynman video about scientific method, he kind of explains that the first step to creating a theory or anything is what he calls a guess, which is kind of what I would say here is your idea of experience, you know, experienced opinion. Sorry?
So when they use a guess, would that be classed as sometimes superstition or?
No, it'll be. It's not like a complete blank guess when scientists come and think up new laws. You take kind of your underlying general understanding and try and come up with a guess that kind of goes along something, which is kind of what you were saying there, Tom, with an educated guess, I think. And then it then explains that the next step is to simulate what you think will happen, and then to do it in real life and compare the results. And if they don't compare, then your theory is wrong. So in a way, that kind of knowledgeable guess or knowledgeable opinion, as in, one, you know that you're guessing, you understand that you're guessing, and you don't tell people that what you're saying is true, what you're saying is you're guessing. And two, that you have to then provide either some sort of data or do some sort of experiment, and if it's wrong, then you have to let it go. That kind of opinion, I think, is great.
Yeah.
There's also the subjective opinion, you know, I like music, I like carrots, I like blue. And that kind of stuff is fairly fine, fairly harmless, as long as you, as you said, you stick it to your own personal choice, you don't impose that on other people. That's kind of fine. The dangerous one is the unknowing opinion. People who say opinions and they don't even realize that it's just an opinion based on completely nothing. And they try and promote their opinion as fact. As you said, you know, we'll never get to Mars. You can never feed all humans on the Earth. You can't house everyone. Those kind of opinions are based on absolutely nothing. They're based on either just a kind of an inability to say, I don't know, which is a major thing in the scientific method. If I come to you and I say, what can you tell me about railways? And you don't know anything about railways, then great. That's what I want to know. I don't want to be listening to someone who doesn't know anything about railways. Maybe you can then point me to someone who does know about railways. That's what you want. Because if you tell someone an opinion, in that kind of investigative manner, they're thinking, how do I do something? And they go, it's an opinion, but no, you can't do it. And that stops that person's investigations. That stops it dead. And that's not what you want to do. You want to allow people to investigate and explore as much as possible.
I've kind of found that same situation when I've talked to anybody about a resource-based economy. They'll say, it wouldn't work. And I'll be like, well, I've only got certain facts myself. I'm still learning about it. So if I'm still learning and I don't know why it might not work, if there was any reason it wouldn't. But these people haven't even looked, like say, even watched a documentary to have an idea of what I'm talking about before they've said, it's definitely not going to work, you know what I mean?
That's the thing, and especially with the Venus Project, it takes a bit of patience to really get an understanding that I think some people they just don't anticipate when coming into it. So you expect a short answer, but if I give you, a couple hours worth of videos and maybe some books to go and read, so that's just not the mindset that people are necessarily in. So it's maybe part of our fault to kind of give people a better understanding of what you need to do to get an understanding. But at the same time, people are rushed, we're all busy, and so if you're having a 10-minute conversation in the shop, like how far can you go? So there's a bit of limitations there, but I think, I
think what would be good for a podcast in the future would be methods that we've found on how to talk to people and our peers and how to deal with certain situations regarding the Venus Project, because that's something that comes up a lot, and that's something that I've certainly dealt with personally, is like how to talk about the Venus Project and the resource-based economy positively and constructively, and how to get something out of it.
Mm.
And a second point as well, just going back to opinions, I think it's really important to note that the way societies run today, the political practice is predicated on opinions. It's based on opinions. So parties will say, we think that the best way to do this is this, and another party will go, well, they'll disagree, and it'll be an argument of opinions, and that's not constructive, and it's not objective. It's not okay. So the carrier capacity of Earth is this. We have this many resources in this region. We need to, get some to here. We need to build cities here and here and here to, provide for the biggest population. That's science. That's a scientific method applied to societal management. But as it is today, it's opinion based, and it has been for thousands of years, and it doesn't need to be anymore. It's obsolete. We can make it obsolete.
Well, that's really democracy. Democracy is based on people's random opinions every 4 years, and that is supposedly a good control mechanism for the running of society. I don't quite see it as that. What I like, actually, just kind of like, this was a pet peeve of mine about a little while ago, when they did the reshuffle. Like, I do not understand how anyone who is so advanced in their field that they are in vast amounts of control of a certain sector, how they could be just easily moved into a completely different sector. Like, how do you take the guy out of transport and put him into the internet management, or how do you take a guy out of farming and put him into police? Like, it doesn't make sense. They should have at least a good amount of knowledge and background in these areas if they're making decisions on them, which means in at least today's society where specialism is like really kind of hounded at people, if people aren't taught to be good at different areas. People are only taught to be good at one area. So like, how do you take people out of these different areas unless the actual skills that they're doing has nothing to do with the actual technical understanding and the technical capabilities of the different sectors? They just, they know how to speak and nicely and get votes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Politicians. I watched a Carl Sagan video earlier on saying Oh, that was it. This combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. Like I watched a documentary called "What We Can Do When We Grow," cannabis, I think it was, and it showed you all the brilliant uses, and many uses of hemp. And there was a guy in there that was the government's advisor on drugs, and he'd advised them, you don't need to move the cannabis up to B class because it's not dangerous. And they just sacked him. They sacked him because they didn't agree with what they were saying, but yet he was a scientist, he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah,
I think I've seen that video, or at least one similar where an ex-government scientist guy sits down and actually rates what he would completely impartially rate the drugs at, and it was shocking how different it was, and it was really shocking how high caffeine, beer, alcohol and tobacco was compared to some of the Class A drugs.
Yeah, without getting into like a massive discussion,
Yeah,
that's what we could do. I like it when like politicians are asked, like pinned down and asked, why is cannabis legal, and their response is because it's legal. It's like, all right, so like why is it legal? Because it's a drug and it's illegal. It's, all right, cool.
Well, they live in this completely abstract world of words, so there's no physical reference to everything they're saying. So in the end, you'll find them just being self-referential and just not doing anything. But hey, I think we've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent there. But let's kind of keep it on track. What was the next point that we had, Tom?
I had a few quotes that I thought were similar, and so people are conditioned to serve the interests of an established culture. They give us a value system which supports the established culture. For example, blaming an incident on the will of God stops you from being innovative and creative and allowing you to design new systems and change the environment. So the amount of superstition that a culture can absorb would be directly proportionate to the amount of information those people have.
Knowledgeable people don't believe in superstition generally. And we've seen that trend over the years of growth of education standards.
Yeah, like a perfect example that I really, really love is how easy it is, to convince, say, someone from England that people in Russia are, I don't know, like they're crazy, they're alcoholics, and they're stupid. And then you give the Englishman and the Russian man the access to the internet, and you can go on a forum or watch YouTube videos, and it's weird. It's like the first time I experienced it, it was genuinely weird watching a Russian guy use the same internet memes, laugh about the same things, talk about the same things as what I'm interested in. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's in Russia. That's like a completely different place, right? This was a few years ago. And that's the internet. That's information right there. I mean, you can't create propaganda about something which people are informed on.
It's the internet is such a powerful emergence in the 20th century. Like it has made obsolete country borders. It has made obsolete, not quite obsolete, but if people stop watching the news and start going and doing their own investigation on the internet, it kind of removes propaganda. We're now the citizens of the internet, of the world. We're not like English and French and whatever.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think it's underestimated how much of an impact it's having on the psychology of people who use it.
And this almost is the scientific method. It is the internet was a new technology that has changed the environment for so many people. We now have access to so much more that it has then gone and it has started to change the values of the people.
Hey.
I was just going to say, going back to that Fresco video, it said when superstition prevails, you'll find that ignorance prevails as well. And there's a guy at work I talked to, and he refuses to use Facebook or the internet because he seems to think that, I don't know, people are going to, well, I know the NSA might spy on people, but they're going to come and attack him or something. But he's still talking about like Illuminati and things like that. And I'm trying to feed him information about like resource-based economy and what the world could be like, but he's religious as well, so he don't believe in technology. He thinks technology is going to cause a Terminator-style ending to the world. You know what I mean? So again, because he's not got any information to feed from it, he doesn't use the internet. He's kind of going on just what people tell him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. It's like that kind of value of non-lighting the internet. It is because of the Terminator. It is because of cultural indoctrination and films and books and TV shows all telling people that technology hates you, which it doesn't. It just doesn't. But it serves the purpose of keeping people ignorant, of keeping people restricted to, say, channels 1 to 4, and which is, it's such a small selection of information input. Whereas, the internet and the internet isn't perfect, but the internet allows you access to so much more stuff. The internet gives people access to more experience, which can then, broaden people's thinking ability and broaden people's tools.
Broaden people's reference.
Yes, frame of reference. That is the one. Thank you.
So yeah, another kind of sub-point from that is a question that I raised. Why is a fixed state value system dangerous? And how does the scientific method of thinking cause a fixed state values system to become obsolete? So what I mean by fixed state value system is a series of opinions and values and ideas that someone may have, where they strive to keep them intact and to genuinely not change them, regardless of new evidence. So for example, say if a lift was invented, like an electric lift, and people no longer had to walk up the stairs, but then someone said, well, walking up the stairs is what I've always done, and I will always do it. That's kind of like an example of a fixed state of value system.
It's blindly following tradition, just because you have before.
Indoctrination.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part of that. What I really like with this question is it brings up a question that people ask me a fair amount about the Venus Project. They say, isn't the Venus Project this utopia? And what they don't understand is a utopia is a fixed state value system. The utopia is you've got to a point and you refuse to change. And that is nearly what we have now in, capitalist democracy. They think it's the best, and the powers that be, whatever, do their utmost to keep it exactly how it is. Now, they can't do this because technological change does not slow down, doesn't bend to the will of people. It's something that we have to embrace and we have to actually use to evolve as we go forward and to evolve our society, which is what the resource-based, well, one of the things about the resource-based economy which is so great, which is it's constantly and consciously updating itself.
Yeah, like say for example a method of society in today's society, say if that's pointing out to be false, a lot of people will try doing patchwork and try and just kind of run with it. So I don't know, the banking system, for example, without going into detail. Whereas in a resource-based economy, it would be a positive thing to say, I found a fault in the system, and here's a way we can fix it. That would be brilliant, because that would be advancing, and that's also kind of aligned with the scientific principle of methods.
No, you're right. Go on, Mick.
I was just going to say, a lot of people that I know as well, kind of, even though at one point they were mourning about the monetary system, saying it's wrong and all this, as soon as I kind of went, well, let's try and do something about it, like joining the Venus Project movement and the Ziggy's movement. They were kind of like, oh no, it'll never happen, and now they've kind of changed to, this monetary system works, it works, you know what I mean? Because they've got money and they're comfortable at the minute, you know what I mean? Then they're not interested about the rest of the world that's suffering or in poverty.
The interesting thing is, I watched a a video the other day about wealth inequality and distribution of wealth and stuff like that in America, and there's another one in England. And the interesting thing that kind of thing made me realize, because I was having this discussion with my friend the other day, I was trying to explain to him how he was only as free as his wallet in this system. You can only do whatever you can afford to pay. And he was like, oh, but I can do anything that I want. I could go and get a loan, and I could do this and whatever. And I was trying to come up with an understanding of kind of why that was wrong. Because, for one, he was kind of being stubborn, and he didn't understand when I said, well, what if you want this, this, and he didn't quite understand what I was getting on about. But at the same time, like him and myself, we're not particularly well paid, but we are so much better off than the bulk of the world, even though I feel like within my society I am low ranking, I am like not as well off as most of the people around me. But in fact, we're right up there compared to most of the world. It's very interesting.
We're always chasing more money. We'll never have enough. Yeah, somebody's always got something we haven't got.
I tried to come up actually with almost like a formula for that the other day. I was thinking about it, and so money is a scarcity object. So the idea is that you have to get it because it's scarce, and it's worth however much. Like it's what money's worth to you is relative to the amount of money you have. So a pound to a homeless person on the street is a lot of money, whereas a pound to a banker is nothing. That kind of thing. So, but the incentive in our society is always to improve yourself through money, to get more money into that, because that's the way of evaluating your performance. But as you get more of it, it's worth less to you. You need bigger raises. That's how greed occurs, I think. Because
that's interesting, yeah.
So that was just a random theory, but
no, that's
maybe
cool.
I need to explain it a bit more.
I understood it. I understood the principle of it. Yeah, I'll think about that.
I kind of have a hope that if we do ever get to a resource-based economy in my lifetime, that instead of people coveting money, they might covet knowledge and the progress of the rest of mankind. That's my hope.
Yeah, that is the biggest point that we had, because we watched those wealth quality videos and had a discussion afterwards with some other POCs, and that was the big thing I think that really came out to it is, what do you class as wealth? Do you class your wealth as the money you owe, or do you class your wealth as the experiences that you have had, could have, are having now, your knowledge levels, all that kind of stuff, the access that you have to things?
When money if money became obsolete tomorrow, would you have the knowledge to grow your own food or forage it, or produce your own energy? I think that's where I think the shift's got a bit to what we know instead of how much we have material possession.
Just kind of like a point on that as well. Technology's made it so that we don't have to learn, so many different things to be able to know so many different things. So say I need to grow my food tomorrow. I don't have to already know that. I don't have to study it. I can simply Google it. I can Google it and study it for maybe a day and then come up with certain basic methods, and then over time learn it that way. So a point mentioned earlier by you, Mick, as well, was how when people you talk to say it'll never change, you can't change the world. The world won't change. But to me, it's more a question of how it will change, because the world will change. We cannot sustain our current system. Things are leading to a climax. The population getting larger, resources getting more scarce, the monetary system failing, the democracy failing, more wars, more dangerous, relatively dangerous technology, as in the technology is in the hands of people who may not use it for the benefit of mankind. So,
and as things get more desperate with climate and social political affairs and things start breaking down, that's where more abuse of technology will come in, which is not something that we want to see. Mick, going back just a sec, with regards to getting rid of money tomorrow, the way I see it at least is that it's going to be a gradual transition, which is what the Readiness Project talks about. It's a transition to a moneyless society, to a moneyless world. You can't just go to everyone in the world now. In our current setup of the culture, money is gone tomorrow, carry about your daily lives. It just wouldn't happen. That is anarchy. What you need to do is set up the environment through experimental cities and through generation of new cities and new value systems within people so that we can live without money.
I think Iceland has taken a big step with that as well. 99% renewable at the minute, as far as I've seen.
Yeah, lots of that stuff's coming in. It's very good. We need more of it, though.
So, final point I kind of got from that video is another question. So, why is questioning everything? Why is questioning fundamentally important and intrinsic to the scientific method of thinking? And why is it important that we employ that in our daily lives? And why is it important that is taught to people, to children, to question? Because I think
I think it's really important. I mean, a lot of propaganda on Facebook you'll see about Sharia law coming and things like that. People just believing it on a whim without researching it. Kind of end up becoming as radical themselves, like EDL. And start spreading it like it's truth. We are looking into it and seeing what is true about it. I mean, I saw the other day there was a white guy who put on a beard and dressed as a Muslim, stood next to a lamppost with a Sharia law poster on it, and everybody was spreading like it was coming into Britain, like there was evidence. You know what I mean? But to me, that could have been anybody with just a poster and dressing up like a Muslim man, and they're spreading it to cause hate, just like the extremists that they're trying to get rid of.
And Jacques mentioned it as well in the video, but in a lot of places in today's culture, it's seen as like a negative thing to question. It's penalized. So, like God is almighty, or even freaking democracy is almighty. Why? Tell me how it's beneficial. And then people would be, oh, you hate England, you hate America, kind of thing. It's, you
hate freedom.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, people need to be taught how to question what and how to respond to people's questions, and therefore that also people will end up questioning their own values. People will end up questioning their own beliefs eventually, and then finding means to measure that which is like measurable and that which is objective. Like, I mean, I used to believe in a lot of things I don't believe in now, based on the fact that I questioned everything I thought, and that led me to become more educated, better equipped to accomplish things in life, kind of thing.
I've found as well it's helped me connecting to a lot more people that have been in the Venus Project or the ZP's movement a lot longer than me. The first time I jumped on CDM's Facebook page, I was going mental about 9/11 conspiracy, and luckily the guy spoke to me and said, look, you might want to think again about what you're talking about, and had a look into it, researched it some more, and realised I was wrong. But the guy that taught me, he wasn't mocking me to belittle me, he was helping me, and since then I've learned to research things instead of just spouting them out.
Yeah, encouraging like more education and more research is like a real big thing that I think everyone who kind of supports this kind of direction should be doing, and they should also be undertaking education themselves because no one knows everything about this. You should always be questioning it, always trying to figure out some other aspect of this. I think a really good thing actually to help with this kind of scientific inquiry, and I think this is something that we'll probably come back to again later on in another show, is a semantic understanding of words, and because words is everything. we interact with everyone through words, and there's so much underlying cooperation across humanity through the use of words and through the use of
Like fundamentally, society requires communication. We communicate with words, and without, like tomorrow, no one in the world can talk tomorrow, and there's no like language that everyone can kind of understand, and it kind of shuts down. I mean, that's kind of what it's like now because of the way semantics are interpretable, language is interpretable. So, misconceptions happen, and that can be very dangerous.
and the kind of the basic method in semantics of breaking down a phrase or an opinion maybe, or some sort of judgment by someone, to try and really understand what they actually mean and where you can come to understandings with that person, and those kind of questions will really help you to understand, even assess someone who you're trying to get information from. If they say, if you say, I want to go to the moon, like, you'll never go there. If you just leave it at that, it's the end of your inquiry. But if you go, okay, so why do you think you'll never go there? And they'll say probably some nonsense, and then you can go, well, why do you think that? And you break it down until you realize they're talking about nothing. So that kind of inquiry will help people's education processes as well. I think semantics is really, I don't know, it's something that I've been researching now for a couple of months, and it is incredibly interesting. Right, I think that probably covers our area of scientific method of thinking and just generally scientific method. Does anyone have anything to add on to that?
Not immediately.
Right. Cool, so I guess we're going to hand over now to Mick, who's going to give us his findings from his inquiry into Project Cybersyn.
Project Cybersyn was created or designed by Stafford Beer, who was born in London, England. The name Cybersyn was short for cybernetic synergy, and Stafford Beer imagined the system based on the human body. Stafford Beer talked about how the system worked in a video that you can find on YouTube entitled On Cybernetics /Stafford Beer. In that video, Beer said, quote, why is it in a technological age we are stuck with information that is 6 to 8 months out of date and causes the government to take exactly the wrong decisions each time? We don't have to do that. We have a technology that deals instantaneously with communications. End quote. Before I even knew about Ziggy's or Venus Project, I often wondered if we were actually in a democracy, why we couldn't specify individually what we wanted our tax to be spent on, for example, healthcare or education, instead of war. And I believe if Stafford Beer had been given more than 2 years to carry on his project, it could have incorporated national and instantaneous true democracy in Chile, unlike the one we have now. And going back to how Stafford Beer imagined the system being based on a human body, for example, eyes are our senses. Say if we saw the brick coming, we'd duck, whereas with Project Cybersyn, it saw the effects of workers striking and compensated by requesting more products from different factories. Project Cybersyn was a distributed decision support system to aid the management of Chile's economy, and it ran from 1971 to 1973 under the reign of Salvador Allende, who was quickly trying to restructure Chile's economy because he was nearing the end of his term as a president. Salvador had only asked for some of Beer's staff to help them with the Professor's project, but when Stafford Beer heard of the request, he was so excited about the chance to put the theory to work, he dropped everything he was doing and travelled straight to Chile to a warm welcome, from what I've read. And they found 500 unused telex machines and placed them in different factories around Chile. And according to Beer, that accounted for at least 200 of the major firms, accounting for 60% of the national economy. They collected all the telex machines in a network to the centre, they connected all the telex machines in a network to the central computer in Santiago, and those machines would feed back information such as products and staff absenteeism. That information was then put into another computer with economic simulation software. They called that the Chilean Economic Simulator, or CHICO for short. And I imagine this was an older or more localized version of what a resource-based economy might be like. I don't know if anybody saw Peter Joseph's recent talk in Germany, but he used formulas that might work similarly to the ones used in Project Cybersyn or CHICO. Talking about like having an abundance of whatever we want, but as long as the resources are available, you know what I mean? As soon as the resources start declining for some reason or another, that certain product that we'd normally have in abundance, we don't get, you know what I mean? We've got to look for alternative means or solve the problem that's there. And back to Project Cybersyn. When I read about Project Cybersyn Beer, I found a quote from a talk he did in Valladolid, Spain, which kind of goes along scientific method as well. Quote, according to the cybernetician, the purpose of a system is what it does. This is a basic dictum. It stands for bald fact, which makes a better starting point in seeking understanding from the familiar attributions of good intention, prejudices about expectations, moral judgments, or sheer ignorance of circumstance, unquote. I also checked out President Salvador, and seeing as he was the guy who instigated the project, and with him being a doctor, he apparently understood Beer's concepts, and they got on quite well. Stafford quotes what President Allende said to him about the top managerial role of his project in the YouTube video I mentioned above. Quote, and then I got to the System 5 and I drew a big histrionic breath, and I was going to say, this Pettinger Presidente is you. And before I could say it, he suddenly smiled very broadly and said, System 5, at last the people. That was a pretty powerful thing to happen. It had a very, very big influence on me, unquote. And Beer was just pointing at the Project Cybersyn had a few different levels. And the fifth level was where the president would dictate what was happening with the resources. But President Allende at the time said, this is what the people will be asking for, you know what I mean? So going back to a true democracy where we'd be able to just give feedback to a computer, and then the computer be able to work out what we need and what the demand is, and then supply it. The wiki file that I read about Salvador Allende described a boosting economy around the time of Project Cybersyn, but I can't seem to find any evidence to connect the economic boost directly to the project. I found another article about Project Cybersyn, and like one of the things written describing the project, quote, it shows how available resources can be creatively used for new purposes by change-driven individuals in a change-inducing environment, unquote. So kind of going along the same lines as Jacques Fresco in saying that we'll be constantly changing as needs and wants as the society evolves. And in another article, Andy Beckett's article, he describes how the project looked to strive in the face of adversity and then slowly came to an end. Quote, across Chile, with secret support from the CIA, conservative small businessmen went on strike. Food and fuel supplies threatened to run out. Then the government realized that Cybersyn offered a way of outflanking the strikers. The strike failed to bring down Allende, unquote. So it kind of showed how even though America and the CIA were trying to economically block and upset Chile's projects and Allende, because I think it was Marxist or some different form of Marxist regime, so they thought they were tied in with Russians. They tried to stop what was happening, and it didn't work because of the system was that good. And then Andy Beckett's article carries on. All the while, the right wing plotting against AND grew more latent, and the economy began to suffocate as other countries, encouraged by the Americans, cut off aid and investment. I think it was President Nixon at the time, right? Finally, Beer was accused by international press of creating a Big Brother-style system of administration in South America.
Yeah, okay, so that's good investigation there, Mick. It's a very nice report. It's very interesting, this project, that seeing at least a country going out and doing something quite so radical, especially kind of at the time. And Project Cybersyn, which for anyone is spelt CYBERSYN, all one word, Cybersyn or Sin, or like it's very, very close. Well, it's fairly close to the Venus Project's idea of cybernated governments, of having these direct feedback mechanisms throughout your production systems, which could self-regulate and help to ease, droughts or, low stock, that kind of stuff. There is a fair amount of difference between Project Cybersyn and what was going on in Chile in a resource-based economy. Things like, well, obviously money was still used widely, human labor was still used widely, and there was a kind of, but yeah, there was differences between these two things. I think one of the aspects that Project Cybersyn doesn't quite touch on is the actual value side of a resource-based economy. It's very practical, and it's a way of giving and collecting data. But kind of in the system that was set up at the time, and there was a whole load of propaganda going around about communism and centralist kind of control. The problem that I think there's stuff a bit talks about in that video is they only had one computer. Chile was a pretty poor country at the time, and as you said, it was getting blocked by tons of these people. So they were making do, and they only had like a couple of computers. So yes, it was centralized, but he said if we had more computers, it would have been. He would like it to be more distributed. But that's kind of the circumstances of where they did at the time, and they did get a fair amount of stick for that, but possibly unfounded stick. The thing with that is it really depends on what the humans do with the data that the machines give them, because that in Project Cybersyn, that is the buffer above what the computers do. The computers give out suggestions, and then the humans can choose to ignore them completely. Whereas what you should do, what a resource-based economy would do with the scientific method, is you would use the computers to evaluate and simulate suggestions, but that is really actually you're arriving at an answer based on the latest technology and understanding that you know how now, kind of through the computer network of sensors and calculations, that kind of stuff.
I like the idea that when President Aiden said at level 5, that's where the people are going. The idea of giving feedback to a computer, obviously, with a kind of buffer or a filter that the computer would already have in it to make sure that whatever we're asking for is within the carrying capacity of the Earth. But just that we'd be able to give feedback to a computer, unlike trying to give feedback to a politician who just dictates what's happening. I kind of thought that side of it, I'm not sure how that would work in a resource-based economy, so I suppose that's a question. Would we be giving feedback to a computer, and would it be the computer that then makes what decisions a politician would make now?
I think I might be able to answer that. Basically, decisions would be arrived at, not made, kind of thing. So basically, for example, statistics or feedback or data would come in saying that a certain area needs more growth of, I don't know, carrots. The population have requested that, or there's a scarcity of carrots. So then that wouldn't be displayed necessarily. It might be, but it wouldn't be like, okay, so this place needs more carrots. What are you gonna do? It'd be the seeds. The carrots surely don't come from seeds.
Um,
Really, seeds?
well, they must do.
Or is it like
Bulbs, maybe.
bulbs? Yeah, probably. Yeah, bulbs. Sorry.
I don't know. I'm not a gardener.
Yeah, carrots was a bad example. Should do something I'm familiar with. No, I'm sticking with carrots. So bulbs would be automatically sent to like mechanized farms in that region, or in a region which would be able to transport the finished product, and basically, you know, they'd be automatically planted. Like algorithms would be set in place on how to grow them to the best standards. So, you know, the best nutrients, the water that they need, the the UV light, and then they'd be automatically sent as soon as possible to the places in need. That would be a long-term solution. A short-term solution might be we need access to a resource. Carrots is a bad example because it don't really endanger society, but I'm gonna stick with carrots. Like a certain city needs carrots, and basically there'd be a warehouse, a supply of carrots somewhere else in the world that would be automatically sent to that place, you know, in the system. So it wouldn't be, oh, we need carrots, we're going to wait for feedback of the scientists in CX, and then they're going to send a message to city Y, which houses the carrots, saying, we need carrots here. It'd be...
Oh, it's not even that in the real world. The real world would be people start to go hungry, then maybe a week later, oh, we finally realized. Then word gets up to the politician, who kind of sits in a room with a bunch of other guys for a week, and then the other guy decides to send him over.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to reference the real world. I was just trying to reference what some people might think a resource-based economy would be.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, it wouldn't be. Yeah, it'd be automatic. So it'd be the quickest and the most accurate. So yeah, does that answer the question?
With regards to sorry, the question like about would robots make the decisions that our politicians do today, is if you look at what a politician really does, is people based on random opinions vote in a guy to make his random opinions. The only things that they affect are kind of law, money, and like that kind of, and really propaganda, which are like kind of abstract things. They don't really do anything. They kind of, in the monetary society, they facilitate some of these other actions. But really what it is you want them out of the way. You want the other city to send it, like to just have a direct link to the actual people or automated machines to just send over the goods.
I was just going to say, so like with Fukushima, something bad happens like that, would the robots detect it straight away? I mean, would there be like a sensor for that? And how would that work?
In a resource-based economy, sensors pervade the world. The sensors, anything that you can be sensed and can be measured that could be useful and informative, you would have that. You would have sensors outside, like right near Fukushima in the ocean. You'd have them halfway across the Atlantic, and you'd go, okay, well, we've seen about this amount of spill, here's what you do. Like, this is the stop. Like, you don't wait for that to build up, wait to create an activist base to affect voting, to affect people to go into power, to then make a decision that you hope they'll back their word on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so like even if a disaster does get past these sensors, so I mean maybe like we can pick up like tectonic plate shiftings and that an earthquake will happen in a week's time, then but say for some reason a disaster did happen, there would be disaster teams, there would be protocol in place that would automatically fire off on at that occasion. So like emergency resources which would be stored and always up to date.
Almost like part-time firemen. My uncle was a part-time fireman, and I remember going down and seeing him in Cornwall, and then one day we'd be out surfing or something, and then he'd get a beep on his phone and he was off. But like instead of a guy and like the actual beep coming from another guy that had to be phoned, you just have a fire's gone off and that beep goes straight to an automated like thing that will come out like a fire engine or sprinkler system, really. Something like that, which would then automatically fix the problem.
Except the analogy of fire is a little bit obsolete because structures in the future in a resource-based economy would be they wouldn't be flammable.
Oh, that's true. I was trying to say,
Yeah.
Just in case. Backup resources.
Yeah, just in case people watching miss that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, Mick, do you want to... Sorry, Karen.
That's right. I was just going to say, so going back to the carrot situation, there's backup systems for the backup systems. So if one thing fails, something else can provide the carrots.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Redundancy. Redundant systems will be...
do you want me to go back to the question? Or,
yeah, go on. I think that's good. My timer says we've got 20 minutes. I've extended it by 10 minutes, so...
so would the Venus Project condone the use of a Big Brother-style surveillance system? Would it be necessary to predict any maintenance staff absenteeism, or would there be no need for cameras other than in production or resource environments used and monitored only by machines?
That's a good question. One that I've been kind of thinking about this week. So... Well, we've kind of touched on this before, but when you say a Big Brother style surveillance system, that is cultural indoctrination straight off. That is, you're seeing the film or reading the book about these kind of things and going, "Oh, the technology's evil," and really, and this is a quote from Jeremy Clarkson. This is the one thing that I think that he said, which is good in a little while. But he says, "It's not the machine. The machine itself is completely perfect. It's the squidgy meaty thing behind the wheel that's the problem." So it's humans who are really in control of the technology and surveillance and that kind of stuff. So that's just kind of the first point. Let's start now. We're looking at the practice of surveillance. So like to surveillance is to survey, is to observe reality, which we've shown earlier in the scientific method is completely it's essential to this type of understanding and thinking of trying to get your mental map and trying to get everyone's kind of mental map to fit the terrain of the real world around us. So you have to observe, we have to measure, we have to be able to come up with ways to help us grow and get better. And surveillance is just kind of observing. So what I mean in this analogy, so doctors use surveillance on a patient's symptoms to diagnose them. So and technology this can be straight from just a doctor's eyes looking at a lump of skin, or they can have a stethoscope, or they can have an X-ray machine, or you can even go up to scientists who investigating new techniques, and are doing experiments, are surveying reality. For example, CERN, the big Hadron Collider, is a big surveillance machine. So we're trying to survey what happens in a tiny, when we get down to the minuscule levels of reality. Surveillance itself is a useful tool for measuring reality. The technology we use for surveillance can be good, can be bad. It's really what the human application of that technology is to the real world. It could be used to be a stethoscope, or it could be a camera on the corner, or someone hacking your Facebook account, or listening to your phone messages. This kind of things happen, but it's the humans behind it. It's not the technology that is bad.
Yeah, I like that introduction. I like how you've worded it.
All right. So the next big bit is what motivates the human misuse of surveillance technology, or the human abuse of surveillance technology. And so, and I'm not saying this is the complete definite thing, but these are the big kind of sections that I can see. Number one is security. People feel, if there's a camera on the street, you feel like you're a little bit safer when you're walking down it in case you get mugged or something. But this kind of ramps up from that kind of personal level to surveillance on supposed terrorists, surveillance on innocent people, that kind of thing. So there's that kind of security aspect of an interpersonal security, and keeping your security and keeping your position of power over certain other people, which is also a level of security, is really one of the prime kind of motivators for surveillance right now. And the thing is that the security, especially against aberrant behavior, you think that by having a camera in your street you're less likely to get stabbed or something, but the actual behavior, that kind of aberrant behavior, is a product of our system that we live in now. And if we start thinking about, if we're transitioning to a resource-based economy, you're transitioning to the methods of science, those kind of behaviors and those kind of like aberrant behaviors kind of disappear, along with the same time the need and the wants for security, because it is guaranteed. When you make enough food available, and enough houses available, enough goods available, people aren't going to steal your stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the other kind of main factor I see right now is, of course, profit. It's profitable to survey people because you can sell people's data right now. Big data is big business. So you see like people like certain web providers and certain app providers and whatever being accused, not saying rightly or wrongly, but being accused of selling personal data and that kind of thing. So, but really what that profit motive is again, it's personal security. These people are trying to make money so they can be personally secure. Really, so again, we kind of come back to security. There's interpersonal security, which is kind of a changing in values can affect that. And then there's the security of access to goods and resources, and essentially the security of your standard of living. And so within a resource-based economy, you can basically provide these, because interpersonal security is off the table because people are behaving differently because the environment is different. And if interpersonal security is still a problem, then we have to look at it more and go more about education, redesign the environment a bit more, not put in like these false impositions to try and stop people's behavior. You change people's behavior by educating them rather than stopping them doing something. So, and the other thing is, profit, which is, again, security of access. So if you've got enough food, you've got enough shelter, you've got enough education, and you provide it for within a resource-based economy, there is no profit motive. We talked about it, there's no money within a resource-based economy, so that kind of motivation goes. And really what you find is, right now, it's because we are in survival mode, because we have to be worried about our interpersonal and our kind of access security, that we get the human misuse of surveillance technology. That is why we kind of see it coming out now, why I see these kind of trends. Along with that, people are, again, kind of illegitimately concerned about technology because it's evil, because of cultural indoctrination. That's the kind of the other part of this.
Yeah, so putting it into kind of like retrospective light as to how surveillance is used in this system, and that allows you to kind of see how it could be used in other systems in not a detrimental way, not a dangerous or scary way. And it's important to see that. It's important to not just class all, say, technology that's used today in areas as that's the definitive use of that. That's how we use it. Like, that's how we use surveillance. There are other ways and other motivation to use technology differently for the benefit of people. So yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Mick?
So would we still have people behind the surveillance camera, or I mean, would it be mainly machines and just people every now and again?
Well, what I would say is that if there is absolutely no reason for a security camera, assuming that we've taken kind of interpersonal and access security off the table, that it wouldn't be there.
Yeah,
Because yes, Tom.
I was gonna say, I mean, a security camera is probably quite a limited method of analyzing an environment or seeing an environment because it's not precise. I can't think of many circumstances in a resource-based economy where you want a camera in an area, in say a public area. There may be some, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Cameras may be wanted to say in farming to monitor crops, a visual monitoring device, as opposed to like pH, the soil, and the nutrients in the soil and the amount of water going in. You might also want a visual representation of the crops. So that would be an example, but I can't off the top of my head think of any examples where cameras would be set up in public.
Well, you could think of certain situations, maybe, and again, this is probably a thing for the transition as we kind of work out these things. But say you had an environment which was prone to crowding. I don't know, say some sort of tunnel, and you know that only a certain amount of people will be within this within a certain time because it's dangerous or there's X, Y, and Z. Then there might be a case where you have a camera and you go, all right, no one can come in here for a little while. Let everyone go out. Use this other route just down there or something. Some sort of visual represent traffic management, almost like the traffic lights. When you go up to them, they have a camera on top of them, and if you're waiting at the lights but there's no one coming, they'll recognize that and they'll let you go.
I was kind of thinking along the lines of human behaviour. Would we still, in the resource-based economy, would we still use a camera to see about? I mean, I'm guessing in a resource-based economy, there'd be a lot less people drinking. But I mean, what exactly what I've been indoctrinated to see when I'm watching things, when I've watched any TV programs about people drinking on a night out and getting violent and fighting, kicking the shit out of each other. Would we still use it for that, or would that be transitioned out?
I think that would be transitioned out. An important note on the violence regards to alcohol. Alcohol doesn't cause violent behavior. Alcohol amplifies predisposition behavior of a person. So if I'm predisposed to kind of be happy and I drink alcohol, I'll likely become more happy. I'll become really excited. If I'm generally angry person and I drink alcohol, that'll be amplified kind of thing. So it's not that people drink alcohol and become angry and violent. So I mean, in that sense, a lot of the reasons why we'd need cameras in society as we do now to monitor those situations would become obsolete due to the design of the environment. So we design environments whereby people wouldn't be violent, where people wouldn't resort to violence, and therefore you wouldn't need to put a camera outside, a club.
I get it.
Yeah. So I think that kind of leads us on to the last bit in this, which is the motivation for the use of surveillance technology within a resource-based economy. You kind of touched on this already, Mick, but the real motivation would be the scientific method. If there is a real provable reason that you want to measure or you want to do something like that, then yeah, sure. If it is clear and it is under the guise of the scientific method of you're trying to experiment and you're trying to prove something, then yeah. As Jacques says as well, if tomorrow you went to him and he said, when the whole world's in, let's do the Venus Project, let's do a resource-based economy. The first thing you'd have to do is to survey the resources available to base the culture on that. So that's a type of, again, surveillance, and that would be kind of ongoing. And it's almost a part of the Project CyberSyn thing that you said earlier, where you'd be surveying the production capacities and all that and that kind of thing, alongside with you'll be surveying the environmental effects. You've been surveying also kind of personal surveys and that kind of thing about skill sets or really depends exactly what you need to talk about and need to survey about. But the kind of thing would be, in a resource-based economy, that all the information collected would be made available. I believe, anyway. I don't see why not. It would be freely out there. The Venus Project already has a project up and running called COCERN, which is a monitoring system for the state of the Earth. It's fairly limited right now, but it can do things like track the amount of births and deaths and the amount of people who are hungry and starving and that kind of thing. If you search around on the Venus Project's website, I'm sure it's up there. So yeah, that's really what it is. And when you make the information from the surveillance available to people, they will then have the ability to make more accurate decisions. It gives people more of an accurate map with which to kind of go across the terrain, using that same analogy again.
That's a great fundamental and crucial point. Yeah.
Also, so like, how would this surveillance take place on maybe on kind of some kind of specific areas? Well, I think maybe voluntary, anonymous, kind of personal surveys could take place if something was really kind of needed about, habits of, I want more of this type of house, or I want more of this type of house. You could then maybe go and set up the production facilities to cater more to people's wants, if you had that kind of spare capacity. Another one, again, this is going back to Project Cybersyn, which is the access requests. If you go into a library and check out a book that's measured on a sensor somewhere, it might have your name on it, it might not, it doesn't matter. What matters is that the book has been used. So if you put that into a resource-based economy, you go somewhere and you take out a jet ski, and you like it, and you go, that jet ski's been used, that's gone into a data bank somewhere. You can then maybe in a monthly review of some sort, or I don't know, this will probably be ongoing actually, as it is a cybernetic type system, which would be a measure to measure the amount of demand and the amount of use against the amount of supply they have. For instance, if there's 200 jet skis and only one gets taken out on per month over a 100-day basis or something, like only a couple get taken out here and there, then you send some back and it gets recycled and reused and put into those resources get put into a different means. Similarly, if lots of access requests come in and you're reaching the limits of how much you can supply, then more can be automatically made.
Yeah.
So, and that would be a form of surveillance as well.
And that goes back to decisions not being made by people or machines, decisions being arrived at. Yeah. Okay, that seems like a good enough place to finish. If anyone has anything else they want to talk about?
No, I mean, I like what you said about all information collected would be made available to all, so people haven't got any kind of grievances against that, I mean, it stops any moaning.
Yeah.
It's not just about fairness, it's not about equality, it's about, if everyone is more informed, it's a better life for me. It's also a better life for all of us if everyone else is more informed. It's not, you don't want to be the only guy who knows everything and everyone else is dumb.
Also, that there'd be no kind of bodies of power who would want to withhold information for any reason. There'd be no motivation for that. Like, as you said, it benefits everyone for society to, be, I can't think of a different word except as free as possible, like providing the most freedoms, which would be access to information would be one of those freedoms.
All right, so that's all the time we've got for today. Thanks for coming along and checking out our show. We've been the Venus Project Supporters Show from the UK on UK Collapse Radio. I've been Aiden Fry, and we've had our guests Tom and Mick. Thanks for coming along, guys. It's been a great show.
All right, thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and tune in. Next week we'll have a repeat of this show, but the week after we will be again talking about very interesting stuff about the Venus Project, and I'll see you soon.